All right guys, welcome back to Simply Built. Today, we're going to be framing a wall. I'm going to show you all the steps involved in that process. Today's wall is a simple wall with no openings in it, meaning no doors, no windows. Should be a pretty straightforward one with some nice basics to teach you how to frame a wall, both correctly and to plan, as well as to engineering specs. So a couple things to keep in mind before you even start framing a wall is you got to look through the floor plan for wall heights, wall lengths, and any engineering details that might be called out on it, such as shear wall details, load points, hold down straps, your bolt layout pattern, and any special engineering that is being called for in that wall. There's nothing special going on this wall. We know it's 9 foot tall, and it's just going to have 16 on center stud spacing. So we're going to go ahead and just take a measurement, going to get those plates cut, and we'll start detailing it. Ready to mark these plates out. So one of the first things we're going to do is mark 3.5 mark here, because this wall is going to run long on this corner of the house. So we make that mark, we line that up with our red chalk line just below it. We know that we're lined up this way. And we're also going to line up this edge of the board with that red chalk line all the way down so that we can mark it out with our bolt marker. I'll show you that next. So we got it lined up with the red line for the most part all the way down. Not all wood is straight, so we'll have to kind of adjust it as we go down. You line up the smaller side for a 2x4 wall, so we're going to have it turn this way. Simply square it up with that bolt, mark it. You have a mark right there for that bolt. Work our way down from right to left, doing the same thing. We'll drop back to this one because we have a notch to make to get around that piece of conduit right there. All right, so here we got this piece of conduit in the way. We're gonna have to notch our plate around it. In this case, there's hardly any wood left over on this side of it, so we're actually gonna have to either notch it this way, or we could just cut it on either side and have 2 separate plates. We're gonna go for a notch. Doesn't have to be super tight. In this case, you can see the concrete kind of humps up on both sides, so we want to give some room for that so our wall doesn't sit on top of that. We're gonna bring that top plate, line them up, so we can start our wall layout. So those notch marks I made, I'm going to transfer over to this side, so when we cut them, you know where they are. And this one's just a stud wall. There's no windows, no doors to account for. All we have to account for is the bolts and any conduit being in the way of our stud layout. Pulling from right to left, in my case, from the outside it's left to right. But we know we're going to run our wall sheeting from left to right on the outside. So I'm going to pull my tape this way, make sure that we don't have any conflicts with the bolts. In this case, it looks like we're in pretty good shape, so I'll be able to go ahead and mark those out. Layout for a wall is 16 on center. And what that means is that from 0 to 16, you have a stud right here in the middle. We like to mark them out just in the center, and we all know that if that's the line, you just center your stud over that mark. All right, so here on this corner, since we know this wall is running long, this wall is going to run into it. On the inside, we're going to need some drywall backing. So typically how that gets done is your first stud would be at the very end of the wall, and then we make a flat mark here like that. What that is telling us is that we're going to put a corner in this so that you'll have a stud sitting right here, and then another one long ways this way in the corner, so that on the inside there'll be wood on both sides of that corner for the sheetrock. Now we're just going to line up all those marks I made for our stud layout. All right, so once again, come back to this notch that we marked out here. The way I marked these plates out for the bolts, this bottom plate, so we know this plate is just going to be moving 3.5 inches that way once it's framed. If I'm going to keep this side of the wood to be able to notch around this, then that's this part right here that I'm keeping. So I have to cut out this side. So I'm going to have to transfer these marks over to this side of the board instead of this side. And then from the red line over, we'll get a measurement of how much of this we have to cut out. In this case, it's about 1.75 inches. So I'm going to mark that with my square. A lot of these squares have some pre-made notches on them. So I'm going to go to the 1.75 notch, just dead center on a 2x4. I'm going to make that mark. I'm going to take the saw, set its depth to the same 1.75 inches. So now when I cut this way, it's only going to go as deep as that line is. Then I'm going to plunge cut right through that board to get the rest of that chunk. Now what we have is this notch is going to be on the correct side after we get our bolt hole. Important thing to keep in mind when you're drilling these holes is don't drill it right on the concrete. So I'm going to start the hole, I'm going to pick it up onto that bolt, steady it with my foot, move that board down the line, do all your holes just like this. Before we dry fit this, we're going to go ahead and blow off the slab right here so we can see our line again. Now you'll keep in mind that notch is on the outside, not on the inside, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging later on when you see us stand this wall. Concrete's really shitty right there. Missed a bolt. I missed a whole bolt. So as you can see, dry fit is important because that'll tell us if we missed a bolt or if any of our layout marks were in the wrong spot. All right, with all of our bolts drilled and our studs laid out, now we're going to roll those plates back into an upright position so we can frame this wall. Keep in mind when you roll those plates back up, you're not rolling them the wrong way, especially when you have things like notches and bolts already drilled out. So you flip it the wrong way. When you go to stand it, none of those holes will line up. Now we just stock the wall. So once again, going back to what the plans told us here was a 9-foot ceiling height in this garage. So we got pre-cut studs. These are 104 and 5/8 2x4s. So before we nail any of this together, we got to lay out the wall with, or stock it with studs, sorry. And one of the most important things is crowning all of our studs the same direction. So in this case, almost every piece of wood has a little crown to it one way or the other. We want to crown them all up before we lay them down in the wall. In the case of the corner on the end of the wall, you only need one of them crowned and the other one doesn't really matter because you're going to nail it perpendicular to that one. We're just going to continue our way down the wall doing crowning it and then lining it up with our layout mark that we've put on the plate. All right, now we have our studs all crowned and our wall is stocked. Now it's time to grab our top plate and we're going to walk it straight back. You don't want to flip this end for end, otherwise your layouts won't line up from your top to your bottom. Get that set right there, and now we're ready to start nailing this wall up. How we like to nail our walls is by hand. Going back to these layouts here where we have corners on the end so that we have backing and have the ability to join two walls together at a 90-degree angle, we have to put these guys together. Some people call these a Cali corner. I just call them a corner. Now line this down the whole length of the board. So I've put this corner together. This is the end of this wall where it ties into a wall that's 90 degrees off of it. Now I want to put this corner in the right way so that when we stand this wall up like this, there'll be plenty of wood there for that wall to tie into it. So I got to put this corner up. The other end of the wall, it'll be cornered down. So I was also kidding earlier about hand driving walls together. That's something that nobody does anymore. We like to use pneumatic tools. In this case, framing gun. We're going to work our way down this length of the wall, nailing them in right on the layout marks that we made earlier. Also, important thing to keep in mind is keeping your hand that's steady in the stud back far enough that you aren't catching any nails that might miss the stud and actually shine out the side. Down to this corner, we're going to put this one together, and like I was saying earlier, this one's going to be the opposite direction of that one down there because this wall's coming off 90 degrees on the other side of the wall. And I'll show you what that looks like right after I put it together. So that other corner on the other end of the wall was up. This one is going to be down so that when the wall goes up, the wider face of the corner is facing inward. Now we just repeat the process and work our way back down the other length of the wall here. All right, so now this wall was just under 16 feet total length. Here we got a wall intersecting at a 90-degree angle going that way. We have another one down there going the opposite way. So this double top plate, which is the bearing plate for the trusses above, will have to be 3.5 inches short on that end, 3.5 inches short on this end. And the reason for that is those walls that are coming into it, we want to have those plates running long so that there's some overlap and we can tie everything together. So the wall over there was about 189.5. We're going to take 7 inches of that off. That was 3.5 for either end for plate overlap. So we're going to be about 182.5. Square that off, and we'll cut it right there. Another thing we need to talk about today is job site theft. I had a totally different gun and hose that I was using to put this wall together. Unfortunately, one of my coworkers, Sterling over here, walked off with it. Got a whole new setup. So we're gonna hold this double top plate in about 3.5 inches from the end of the wall. And if we do that correctly at this end, the other end, it should be about the same amount in. So we're gonna go ahead and mark 3.5 here. Move our plate to there, grab our nail gun, and pull it up into place so that they're nice and flush with each other. Pop a couple nails in it. Now going down this board, we want to even it up both this way, but we also want to put in 2 nails every 16 inches. But instead of shooting them straight in where we have previous nails, we're going to go offset it just a little bit. Not out here in the middle of the bay because plumbers and electricians do need to drill through this, so it's just a good practice to put your nails just offset from your stud, and then that way you can still go 16 on center. We got to push this board down just a little. and there's 2 there. We'll work our way down the whole wall this way. Every now and then, it's more than you can push with your hand. Spike a nail in just like so. And there we are, 3.5 short at this end of the wall. Okay, now this wall is ready to stand. First thing we have to do is prepare for that is to glue that edge of the concrete slab right where that wall is going to stand. We're going to want to get some braces over here to hold this wall up temporarily until other walls are built that tie into it. We're using heavy duty construction adhesive. We put this down before we stand our wall so that after the wall gets stuck down with the nuts and washers that go on these bolts, it'll hold this wall in place, creates a vapor barrier and a little bit of an air barrier as well. I'm going to grab our resident tall guy. All right, we're going to stand this wall up, throw it on the bolts. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. We got to pick this one up and go over that conduit right there. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Come on. Easy down. There you go. Okay, hold on to it. We're going to put some temporary bracing on this wall until other walls get built that we could tie into it and make it a little bit stronger. All right, so now that our wall is stood, one of the other engineering details, it shows the bolt pattern at about 32 on center for this wall. That calls for a 3-inch by 3-inch bearing plate, which is one of these. That's got a 1/2-inch slot in it for the 1/2-inch anchor bolt. We get them all set all the way down this wall before we start tightening anything down. All right, so now we're getting ready to suck these things down. One of the most important things we need to do is get this wall on the line that's snapped on the concrete. In this case, it's going to be pushing the wall out a little bit. Another key, so this is saying that that wall needs to go a good 1/8 of an inch this way. So we're going to go ahead and hit that over about there. This is good here, so now I can cinch it down, and that's not going anywhere. We're going to continue that process all the way down this wall, pushing the wall out or pulling it in so that we can see that red line that we have snapped. Something that makes it a little bit easier first is to just slightly suck it down so that the wall isn't moving as much. And then we can tap it in or out with very little foot pushing. That's a new term. Foot push-ups. Now this wall didn't have any openings, so it did go a lot faster. And in our next video, we'll show you a wall that has both doors, windows, and in this case, an electrical panel that we have to cut out for. So this wall is done. Now it's time to go on to the next. So I hope you guys are liking this content that we're putting out. Make sure you hit that like button if you like it. Give us some feedback if you so choose. And then go ahead and subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming videos where we'll show you more wall work and we'll just keep working our way up through this building. Thanks again for tuning in.